What's up, Bears? Wow, so it's looking like Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered is a real thing. We now have different retail outlets putting placeholders up for a Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered, and that is exciting news. It's looking like this Geforce leak is turning out to not be as bullshit as people thought it was at the very beginning. So what's happening now is that now several retailers are putting FF Tactics Remastered up on their site as like a way of saying, yeah, here it is with a release date. I'm not going to go into the release dates, especially of different games that are on this Geforce leak, because, man, those release dates, if they were created, they were probably created pre-pandemic, and with the pandemic, things have just gone awry when it comes to release dates. So I'm not going to get into that today. I don't really want to talk about the release dates because they're subject to change without any type of notice whatsoever. But man, this Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered rumor is just gaining some steam, some serious amounts of steam. Put it on Steam, by the way. So, the Geforce leak, for those that are not really aware, was just a giant, massive list of games that came out of NVidia Geforce's site that just gave away games that seemed like they were pipe dreams, like Final Fantasy IX Remake, a Chrono Cross Remaster, God of War PC. Some of these things just seemed like they were someone's wish list. Well, God of War PC is a real thing. Ghost of Tsushima PC could very much be a real thing. This is really starting to gain some traction, and with Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered, that could very much see the light of day, and I am super excited for this, given Square's recent track record for remasters, and I'm specifically pointing to one remaster in particular, and that is Saga Frontier Remastered. We played the game on this channel. It is really good. It is how you should do a remaster of a great classic on a PS1 title, because they kept the original game intact. They just up-resed it for modern televisions, made everything look really good, crisp, and clear, and added some refinements to it, along with the ability to escape from battle, which made that game so much more enjoyable and a lot less repetitive and a lot less grindy, which was very good for that game. And at the same time, it also put in content that was cut due to budget or time constraints. That is something that is extremely exciting for remasters going forward, because there were many PS1 titles that Square released that they kind of rushed out that I would like to see get the remastered treatment from Saga Frontier and have all that cut content put back in. That would be something that would really enhance the game, and Final Fantasy Tactics has re-released a couple of times for both PSP and Android/iOS devices. However, those versions of the game were bug-ridden, like super bug-ridden. I'd love to be able to play War of the Lions to its completion, because it has such a much better translation, and it has more content and does things that make the game more accessible, but my god is it full of bugs. The audio quality is significantly reduced. Final Fantasy Tactics needs reverb, and they took everything out, and the audio doesn't sound as rich as what it used to on the PS1 version. Along with that, there's also significant amounts of slowdown when you cast spells or special abilities. This is something I would 100% think would be rectified in a remaster, and that's the big thing about Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered. If they're going with a template for Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered, they would use War of the Lions by default, I would think. Use that wonderful translation, use the extra content that was put in the game, and the fact that now Balthier is playable, along with Luzo from A2 Grimoire of the Rift. But my god, man, get rid of those bugs, and this game will be a lot more playable and a lot more accessible going forward if you're going to remaster this and put it on multiple platforms like you did with Saga Frontier. Another thing that Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered could benefit from, and this is probably pretty much a given at this point, is just easier playability, quality of life improvements. Saga Frontier, as I mentioned earlier, gives the ability to run from battles, gives you a New Game Plus where you carry over all your stats, but resets the battle rank. These types of things are quality of life improvements to be expected from a remaster at this point, fast-forwarding stuff and just going through things a lot quicker and getting rid of the less grindy parts of the games. And this is especially true for Final Fantasy Tactics. Because in the War of the Lions version I mentioned, there still isn't the ability to skip battles and run from battles, and that's something that is very tedious in Chapter 4. Chapter 4 has you going back and forth between Galg Machine City and a whole bunch of other places to get more characters, especially Cloud. And having to go back and forth between Galg Machine City and Lazalia Imperial Capital multiple times is tedious because you have to fight every single battle you get into on the way. And Lionel can be especially punishing early on because, man, those ghouls in the marshes are just some of the more tougher areas of the game. That's why I always prefer to do my grinding on the Mondalia Plains. Now, the original game kind of alleviated this by giving you a shortcut between the Egros region and around Holy Place to Galg Machine City, but by the time that shortcut was unlocked, it was pretty much endgame. You can get these characters a lot earlier on in Chapter 4. In War of the Lions, you get Cloud even earlier after the Fort Besselat battle, or Bethel Garrison, depending on how you want to call it. Earlier, he was only accessible after the Limberry Castle fight. But now you get these characters at the beginning of Chapter 4, so that shortcut is pretty much rendered useless by the end of the game by the time you get it, if you can get these characters earlier on, which would be how you would prefer, because the more time you have with them, the better. But as you're going in between these cities to actually fight the battles that you need to fight in order to get these characters, it would be very nice to skip the random fights throughout the map of Ivalice. Because those random fights really don't serve you any purpose when you're trying to get from point A to point B. Just have the ability to run from them, or just turn off the encounters altogether when you're going through that area. It really sucks having to run into a red or black chocobo along the way when all you're trying to do is just get the one Zodiac Stone to awaken the Celestial Globe. That's all I want to do. In terms of graphical improvements in Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered, the game is still a very beautiful game. Maybe you can refine some of the polygons and make them look less jarring, and update some of the sprites to make them less pixely, but at the end of the day, these sprites still hold up, and that is what gives FF Tactics its charm, is the fact that it is a dark medieval fantasy with very bright and colorful and cutesy-wootsy type characters. That's FF Tactics' contrast, is that it is a dark game with cartoony-like characters. Really adds to the atmosphere of the game and makes it really unique, and it's one of the reasons why it's one of my favorite games of all time, and Nags' favorite games of all time as well. Preserve the graphics as much as possible with, like I said, Saga Frontier Remastered. The original game was preserved, it just made it look a lot better on modern televisions. And that's something that Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered should do as well, is make sure that the original game's look is preserved, but make it look nice on modern displays. That's in terms of graphical department. Maybe you can even redo some of the spells, making them look really, really cool. But at the end of the day, you would leave the look of the game pretty much untouched, just refined, so to speak. This is a remaster after all, not a remake, and there is a difference between a remaster and a remake. Finally, in terms of adding content, as much as I stated earlier, use the War of the Lions template, you could even add to that. You have War of the Visions, which has different crossovers on mobile, where you can have Lara Croft in the game, and FF7, more FF7 characters than was actually in the original Tactics. But man, if you could just add more content to a game that's already pretty much perfect in terms of content delivery, that would be something that is astounding. I mean, Chapter 4 is the longest chapter in the game, and it's longer than Chapter 1, 2, and 3 combined. Man, wouldn't it be cool if they added even more dungeons, even more battles, different places that you can go to, and more characters to recruit? That would be something that could really add a lot to Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered and give me a reason to actually play it in 2021 or 2022 or 23, whenever this thing comes out. And whenever it comes out, we could find out in like the next couple of months. The Game Awards is coming up after all, and that's a lot of exciting announcements around that time. And it seems to be winter's E3. So look out for either the Game Awards or E3, sometime in between where this rumor could come to fruition. In terms of when Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered would come out, I would think it would be sooner rather than later, because as soon as they announce this thing, it's pretty much probably going to drop within a couple of months. It's not something that they're going to work on for years at a time, so I'm very much looking forward to it. I hope you're all looking forward to it, Bears. Leave a comment what you think about Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered or the possibility of it. And if you want to talk about more of the Geforce leaks, let us know. But man, if and when these leaks turn out to be true, and everything else that Square has on the horizon, this is an exciting time to be a Square Enix fan.